Thank you for joining me today. It's Brian Gubernick, and welcome to the No Days Off podcast, where we believe that every single day brings a new opportunity to get better. Let's get into it. Today, I want to talk about business and relationships and life, and I want to do so by describing or discussing margin of safety. Now, let me explain. I got to backtrack a little bit. So about a week or two ago, I was preparing for a presentation I was giving. And in that presentation, I wanted to display that 2023 and 2024 have a lot of similarities to years of the past, maybe 1982, maybe 83, maybe 1990, maybe 91, 2007 even. There's a lot of commonalities between these years. And that being the case, what I decided to do was go pull the Berkshire Hathaway shareholder letters that Warren Buffett writes every year, see what I could learn in each of those letters, and then apply that knowledge to how maybe I proceed and others should proceed in 2023 and 2024. Now, we'll save that entire analysis for a future episode, but I want to focus on one specific excerpt that I pulled from the 1990 letter, where Warren makes a statement, and he was referring to, at the time, 1990 was riddled with debt. Heavy debt, companies taking on heavy debt, junk bonds, savings and loan scandal. I mean, there's a lot of things going on around debt. And Warren was talking about those companies that took on debt, thought that their operating managers, the owners of these companies, would focus their efforts more than they ever had before because, well, that debt would prompt them to focus their efforts. And what Warren went on to describe was that, yeah, maybe they focused a little bit, but they could never focus enough. And the roads of business are riddled with potholes. So a plan that requires dodging all of them, is a plan for disaster. And so Warren was basically saying, yeah, like the debt may have motivated some, but there's many potholes, and a plan that requires dodging them all is a plan for disaster. He further went on to say that confronted with the challenge to distill the secret of sound investment into 3 words, I venture the motto, margin of safety. Now, what he's referring to, what Warren's really talking about around margin of safety, bad things happen. So, knowing that bad things happen, because anybody that goes through life and business knows that not all things go perfectly, Warren would encourage us all to create a buffer, to create a margin. Require or define, I should say, your requirements around that margin, maybe even double it once you define it, but ultimately create a buffer. Here's an example for you. Bridges do not oftentimes collapse. I mean, it's very rare that a bridge collapses. And that's not because of luck. It's because engineers design for unexpected faulty parts. And they also design for the occasional load that's higher than what's been defined as the maximum. So in other words, these engineers always build in a margin of safety, hence why bridges rarely collapse. Margin of safety helps us plan. It helps us plan in ways that are more resilient to bad luck, helps us plan in ways that are resilient to maybe errors. Adding a few days to a plan, adding some extra staff, maybe adding some budgeting with a surplus. These are all really good examples of margin of safety. Now, margin of safety, it goes without saying, will almost always come with some sort of trade-off, right? So if you're adding a few days to a plan, well, you could accumulate higher costs due to delays. Or if you're adding extra staff, of course, that could be, increased costs. Right? We can increase timelines. Things like that. When we create margin of safety, these are the repercussions. So you got to be clear about the cost, the trade-off, and the potential value that your margin of safety represents. Now, why am I talking about this? I think many of us are going through some sort of planning process right now, or we've just recently gone through it with respect to our business or maybe our health or whatever it may be. And I look at a lot of these plans and I think they're all based on best case scenarios. When I think about best case scenarios, I think little to no margin of safety. If I built a plan around conservative estimates or even worst case scenarios, I would argue then that we have accounted for some degree of risk. We've created some degree of cushion. Now, I'm not looking to understate where we want to go, but I want you to think not in terms of 100% optimism, but this goes back to a little bit of black hatting. Challenge your assumptions and create a buffer. So for you to hit, let's say, a goal, if you need to have, say, 10 sales to achieve that goal, I would encourage you to maybe build a plan to 14. In getting the 14, you are certain to hit that goal of 10. See what I'm saying? Or if you plan for let's use those 10 sales again. If you plan just for the units of sales, but maybe you don't account for the actual volume or the dollars produced by those sales. Or maybe you overvalued what those sales may be. So increasing the unit count creates a margin of safety. You follow me? So what I'm really asking everybody to do, and the focusing question today, where does this margin of safety need to be taken into consideration for you? Where have you been too lean in terms of your planning? Where the slightest hiccup or the slightest challenge will completely derail the direction you're aiming to go. Once you've identified that area, how can you create a buffer? How can you create a margin of safety that allows for you some room, some cushion in getting to your plan? Maybe you're going over that number by a certain amount. Maybe you're taking backup or precautionary steps today like you do with a bridge. You've got a maximum load and that's defined, but you're probably building to a maximum times, 30%. So where does this apply in your business? What steps can you take today? And how can you create a buffer, thereby creating, more support or a higher likelihood of success? That's all I have for you today, the No Days Off podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, every single day brings a new opportunity to get better. So let's get after it.